Well, moving on now. Armed forces in eastern Libya say they have found about 2.5 tons of uranium ore that were reported missing by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Well, Libya has been a security concern since its former leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was deposed in 2011. Well, Sulaiman Alede reports on how this could affect Nigeria and the continent.
That's an alarm sounded by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. 2.5 tons of uranium have gone missing from a site in Libya. The UN's nuclear watchdog spoke after inspectors visited the undisclosed site earlier this week. They found that 10 drums containing uranium ore had disappeared. There are fears the uranium could pose a radiological risk and nuclear security concerns. The IAEA said the site where the uranium was stored was not a government-controlled site. The IAEA said it would conduct further activities to clarify the circumstances of removing the nuclear material and its current location. It is unclear when the uranium went missing or who could have taken it. The IAEA explained reaching the site has been complicated in recent times. Inspectors had wanted to visit the location last year, but the trip had to be postponed because of fighting between different Libyan militias. In December 2003, Libya publicly renounced nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and agreed to restrict itself to possess ballistic missiles with a range of no more than 300 kilometers. In a This Day report of 2021, President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria insisted that as far as Libya remains unstable, illegal arms and ammunition will continue to flow into Nigeria and other countries in the Sahel region, stating that the closure of Nigeria's land borders for almost a year did not stop the inflow of arms and ammunition into the country. Since Libya's former leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was disposed in 2011, the country has been divided into competing political and military factions. It is now split between an interim government in the capital Tripoli and another one in the east led by General Khalifa Haftar. Missing guns and small and light weapons may not be the same risk as missing tons of uranium. Experts say if you're removing this material from this location, you must really want it. So, who wants approximately 1/10 of the amount of material stored at a facility in Libya? Also, are there radiation concerns with the material as it is today? The IAEA says it was working to clarify what happened, how the nuclear material was removed, and where it is now. Sulaiman Alede, Arise News.
Okay, let's bring in former Director General of the Nigeria Nuclear Regulatory Authority, Professor Shamsideen Elegba, who joins us from the Ugandan capital, Kampala. Very warm evening and thanks for joining us on Newsnight. Tell us very quickly, good news is that the armed forces of Libya have found the 2.5 tons of the missing uranium. But tell us, how much does such, a situation pose or have on the Sahel and the Maghreb regions, particularly with unregulated mining activity in these areas where uranium is dominant? Prof?
Yeah, good morning. This morning already here in Kampala. The radiological impact of the missing uranium is recognized. However, there should not be undue importance attached to it in terms of making nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. No, this still the ore. It's not, at best it will be yellow cake, but the yellow cake, you cannot use it to even run a nuclear reactor, let alone make a weapon. Therefore, it's important to know that, yes, it can have radiological impact. Any unnecessary radiation to anybody is bad. And that is why it has to be found and be taken back into the custody either of the IAEA or the country. But because the country is unstable now, I think the only group that can take over control if there's military safety is guaranteed is the IAEA.
Prof, you're saying because... go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. You're going to make a point?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Great, thank you.
You know what I want to...
Sorry, so you were explaining that in its current form, there are no such risks, such as radiological risk attached and weapons, if I got you right. But what are the possible scenarios around, this large amount of uranium going missing and being found suddenly away from where it was taken from? Can you make sense of all of this? Why did they take it in the first place?
Radiological impact, yes, but not for military purpose. It cannot be used in that form. Therefore, it's important that it's secured in terms of inventory and making sure that nobody has access to it. This 2.5 tons is a cargo that requires some movement, so that for you to enter any other country, it's not a radioactive source that can be put in small containers. This is huge. Therefore, the important thing we should worry about is the radiological impact it will have on the environment, on people who come into contact with it, but definitely has no military significance, except there are people waiting to buy it. People waiting to buy it also, because even to move it across borders within West Africa or Africa or the Sahel region will be noticeable. And to move it across to Europe, even in Europe, there are very few countries that have the capacity to enrich uranium. In Africa, no country has the capacity to enrich uranium. So for it to be enriched is out of the question. The only thing that one can say is the fact that, yes, it's bad to be out of the custody because of radiological safety.
All right, let's talk about the nuclear reactors and Nigeria's plans, for the establishment of that. You were former Director General of the Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Authority, and we know that there is a plan, much afoot, to establish one in Oron, I think, in Akwa Ibom, Eket or Oron in Akwa Ibom State. How far and how well is that? And does that still, portend or poses a lot of dangers to Nigeria and its people?
Nigeria, for the past 15 years, or 20 years now, has been operating a nuclear reactor in Zaria. There's a nuclear research reactor in Zaria. There's a 20-year experience, both by the operating organization, that's the Center for Energy Research and Training, and by the regulator that licensed it. So, as far as running a nuclear reactor in Nigeria is no longer a big deal. There are enough engineers, there are enough scientists, there are enough regulators, and the protocol has been established and tested for the past 2 decades. Now, talking of a nuclear power plant, that's a different ball game, in the sense that it will require not only the regulator or the operating organization. The operating organization in this case is still the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission, but it will not just happen overnight, because it takes a lot of effort in terms of bringing the entire society, bringing the laws into cognizance, so that whether Akwa Ibom, wherever, after all, UAE just built a 4,000 megawatts in the desert, the Baka project. They have commissioned and started using the first 3. The 4th one has started being built. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. we have enough capacity to run a reactor, which we have done. However, we are talking of a power reactor, whether it's 30, 50, 1,000, 2,000 megawatts, that's a different game. But I think there's nothing to hype Nigerians that Nigeria is going to build a nuclear power plant.
And particularly with the abundance of uranium deposits in Nigeria. So what then is the drawback factor for the country to use, to generate energy sources from, setting up a reactor, at least complement the experimental one in Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria?
Yes, Nigeria has uranium. In fact, that center, I think, is the only one in Nigeria that has been able to study the Nigerian uranium to a point. There is one professor, Idris Issa Funtua. He actually did all the work in terms of even producing yellow cake, which, again, it was made known to the International Atomic Energy Agency. So, but yeah, an enrichment of uranium will not take place in Africa because that is the main issue between the United States and Iran. And there is enough. Of course, Nigeria can add value to our uranium deposit by making sure that we convert it to a point and then use it to trade for a usable one, an enriched one by whoever is going to enrich it for Nigeria.
All right.
So there's economic aspect, but in terms of the technical aspect, I think Nigeria is more than prepared now if the decision is taken. Yeah, because there are enough people, even among the regulatory bodies. Mark you, there's also another nuclear research center at IFE at Obafemi Awolowo University, just as there's one in Zaria. So you have a large pool of engineers and scientists that unfortunately most of them have relocated to.
In drain
they have left the country. Yeah, a large number moved out of the country too.
Well, thank you, Professor Shamsideen Elegba, who's former Director General of Nigeria Nuclear Regulatory Authority. We do appreciate your insights.